All right, let's do this. Welcome back to another episode of the GST Junkies. And I want to say thanks to all of our listeners who listened to the first episode. Hope you found it entertaining. And we're here to talk a little bit more about chin-ups today. But before we do that, let's touch base with Mr. Erdi and see how his new life in Australia is treating him.
Welcome back, guys. Yeah, we just got to Oz a couple of weeks ago. I'm now almost in the same time as StreTch. We're in Western Australia at the moment in Perth, and yeah, loving it, to be honest. I'm not sure why more people haven't moved over here. Yeah, having a great time and getting lots of sun while we're here, and also getting some good training and talking to chin-ups. I did 50 chin-ups the other day, which is, I think, the most I've done in a long time. So happy with that.
Look at you go, mate. Look at you. Have you got yourself a pair of thongs yet?
I don't have a pair of thongs though. I've got some nice sandals, but that's as far as I'm going in terms of thongs.
Yeah, I saw you post on Instagram today, actually, of you doing handstands in the sandals. And I was like, oh, no, he's got to buy a set of thongs. It's very un-Australian to do handstands in sandals.
Oh no! Tell you what, when I get my own car, so I think next week we're looking to buy a car so we can travel around easier. I'll get a pair of thongs and I'll probably just leave them in the back for you on the back seat.
Yeah, nice one, mate. Look forward to seeing your stylish
Yeah.
thongs. There we go.
Yeah.
Mate, I'm getting drowned today. So yeah, we're obviously northern Queensland, and it's just been absolutely hammering down with rain. So different side of the country to you right now. Not as much sunshine up here. It's the wet season. We've just had like 150 mil in the last few hours. So it's pretty wet up here today. So
That's intense. It
yeah.
feels so surreal to me that you can be in the same country but have, a completely different climate. But then you look at Australia on the map, being like, it's pretty much, you could fit so many countries into the same continent. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's Europe. You can fit the whole of Europe in Australia 7 times or something crazy like that. So yeah, it's a definitely a massive place.
Awesome. But yeah, I hope the rain stops for you soon. I'm glad you've stocked up on your freezer and food. Keep
Mate,
you
as
going.
long as I've got the gym to train in, so I'm grateful that we built the shed, which is now my
Yeah.
gym space. So when the weather's like this, I can still get my training in, because if I didn't have that, there'd be just no chance of doing anything outside. It's just it's like a river running past my front door, so it's hectic.
Well, I'm glad you still got internet as well, because I can keep sending you pictures of me being in the sunshine.
Yeah, rub it in, mate. All right, today's topic's all about chin-ups, and yeah, we're really going to talk about, I think, building the strength to get your chin up. We're going to share a bit of our stories and stuff as well. But I just want to say, for those of you who have already got your chin up, this will still be a very useful podcast to listen to. We're going to talk about, different ways to train the chin up. And even though you've got multiple reps or you can do weighted chin ups, some of the variations that we might offer are still a good way to progress. And we'll also talk about, building muscle, building tendon strength, doing accessory work, and how to make sure you're not going to get injured, all that sort of stuff. So even though it's sort of focused about getting your first chin up and how we'd help clients get their first chin up, I think it'll be a valuable sort of podcast for those of you who've already got your chin ups. So we'll kick it off. I'll throw this one to you, Eddie. Why are chin ups important?
Why are chin ups important? Yes. Just touching on what you just said, usually, when you can do a few chin ups, you always know someone who wants to do one. Like, you've always got a friend or a girlfriend or like a sibling who's like, oh, you can do chin ups. I want to do chin ups. So yeah, hopefully this podcast will give you the info to help them out as well as yourself. The chin up it's just the biggest pull-in movement for the upper body. Like, if we were to break the body down into different planes, I just like to work with like horizontal and vertical for the upper body mostly. You got some rotational stuff in there as well, but you've got horizontal and vertical pull-in and horizontal and vertical push-in. And the chin-up will cover, like, depending on how you're doing it, it will cover all of the pull-in muscles pretty much for the upper body. And then all you need to do is like use a push-in exercise, and you've pretty much got like an almost complete upper body workout if you're not like, isolating into small things. So this is why I think the chin up is super important in regards to working a lot of the upper body. But then you've also got the fact that it's actually useful in real life. Like, you want to climb a ledge, you want to climb a tree, generally anything climbing based, but also anything like pulling based. You're helping move furniture, you're helping do anything that's like strength involved for the upper body. The chin up is a good foundation element, which will cross over to many, many things, whether it's involved in grip, biceps, lats, back, just stabilizing, etc. It's a good one. So that's my take on it. What about you? What do you reckon?
Well, I'd agree 100%. The pull-up is big compound sort of move. And I think one of the best things it's good for is obviously the structural balance. As humans, we're creatures of pushing in the sense that we work with things in front of us. We're really good at moving and pushing things around. So we use a lot of our pecs and we use a lot of the anterior chain doing this all the time, but we're not really creatures of pulling. We don't do a lot of pulling stuff towards us. So especially when we're in an office and we're sitting all day, everything's in front of us. And this can affect our posture. So to be able to work the back muscles and to be able to do more sort of structural balance, I think pull-ups and chin-ups are key to that. So I think it's quite important that we're doing more pulling than we are pushing. A lot of people are going to the gym and doing bench press and biceps, lots of bro sesh. But, this is not really good for our shoulder health and our longevity. A lot of guys can't put their arms up above their head straight because of the tightness that they have in the anterior part of the shoulders. And I think, a lot more people need to be doing chin-ups and pull-ups with good form to help improve that sort of structural balance, the health of the shoulder, the longevity, of their body. So yeah, that's what I think. That's why I think chin-ups are important. And I think everyone should be able to do a chin-up. Obviously there are limitations. If you're carrying extra body weight, it's going to make it a little bit harder. But yeah, if you've got good body composition and you're training strength, the chin-up should certainly be a goal to achieve. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're interested in any type of physical training, I think just having the chin up it goes a long way. It will carry over to almost everything and anything that you're doing physically. Agreed. So how did you get your first chin up?
That's a good question.
Do you remember?
That's a very good question.
Did you have to train for it, or is it like something that you had? Because some people they're like, oh, I've never done that, but they can just do it. Was that you, or were you like, no, I'm on a mission. I'm going to get my chin up?
Yeah, so I think, I touched on this last time. I grew up playing sport and a lot of team sports, so I didn't really do the gym, and I definitely wouldn't have been doing pull-ups. I would have been climbing trees as a kid and stuff like that, but I definitely wouldn't have been doing chin-ups and pull-ups. I really didn't start going to the gym until I moved to London, and I suppose it was more convenient. I wasn't playing team sports.
Yeah,
I was training for marathons. Like I'd actually started my running sort of career, if you want to call it that, when I moved to London, and the gym became a thing to support, my running. So it was like injury prevention and just sort of maintenance and just another way to keep training and keep the body moving well without just pounding the pavement. And I did hire a PT at the time. So we were doing chin-ups at that time. And I remember having chin-ups, but I don't know that the quality of my chin-ups was that good. I definitely wasn't starting in a dead hang with the shoulders relaxed and then being able to pull myself above the bar.
Yeah.
So, and they say we didn't do a lot of chin-ups in that time of my training. I remember doing lots of rows, dumbbell rows, barbell rows, inverted rows and stuff like that. But I do recall having a chin-up. Also, at a young age, I broke my left arm twice as a kid. And when I started doing chin-ups, I'd always have a little bit of left shoulder pain. So that was something that I needed to work on. And it wasn't later until I hired one of Poliquin's disciples, Derek Woodsky, as my strength and conditioning coach, that we really started to work more on chin-ups. And I remember the first phase he gave me. So we did some assessment stuff and I was like, yeah, I want to get better at this and this and this. And I've got a bit of shoulder pain. And the first phase that he gave me of chin-ups was the A1 was eccentric pull-ups with a 20-second eccentric.
Right.
It was like 2 reps and it was weighted. So it was like, okay, get up, do pull-ups. They're weighted eccentrics, 5 sets of 2, blah, 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 blah. And then the A2 was an external rotator exercise. So we were doing I think it was low cable external rotator. And then my Bs were weighted chin-ups eccentrics. And it was 5 sets of like 3 of those with like a 10-second eccentric and then some trap 3 work. And when he gave me the program, he wrote, "This will get you." And that's all he wrote. But my chin-ups after that, like that phase, doing that for 4 weeks, like lots of time under tension, weighted, eccentrics, which I think I was doing at like 20 to 30 kilos for some of those. Like my chin-ups just went through the roof after that. So that was quite interesting. And the shoulder pain definitely went down. And I think it came back to, when we'll talk about this further, working on, the stabilizer muscles of the shoulder around that.
Yeah. That's
Have-
really interesting because the only time I've ever seen a 20-second eccentric chin-up was in the programming at your gym. And I was like, oh, that's odd. I wonder why they're doing 20-second eccentrics. And then now you've mentioned that, I'm like, oh, okay. Derek Gordsky inspired. That makes more sense now.
Mate, there's a lot. We'll talk about eccentrics, but there's a lot definitely to be gained from eccentrics. And I use eccentrics now with myself and with my online students because of the huge benefits that you can get from just working the eccentric phase.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, what about you, mate? How do you remember your first chin up?
All right.
Was it a one arm chin up? Was it?
Yeah, exactly. But unlike you, I couldn't do a chin up when I first tried one. But I was much younger. I was about 13 years old. I was trying to get in shape, trying to get some abs, and just trying to get a bit fitter in general. My stepdad was he is a tree surgeon, and he was also an avid rock climber or boulder. So he was into all the upper body pulling exercises and body weight sort of training, but mostly with the pulling type of things. It's also probably why my pulling is much stronger than my pushing at the moment, because it's all I ever did when I was growing up as a teen. So I think I was about 13 years old. My stepdad took me to Argos in London. Went and bought a chin-up bar and a sit-up bench, and we put it was one of those fixed chin-up bars which you pressure screwed into like the door frame. So we put one of those in the living room door frame, and I just tried to do one and I couldn't. I was like, I can't do one. He's like, yeah, you just got to keep trying. So yeah, I'm 13 years old. Like I don't really need much programming. I just need to and I wasn't like overweight or like obese or anything. Yeah, I had a bit of fluff and a bit of puppy fat on me, but I wasn't like a big heavy kid. So he's like, yeah, you just got to keep trying. Just keep trying. So I would jump up, I'd like hold the bar, I'd lower down, I guess, and then I'd like do like partial reps. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just like holding the bar and trying to pull to the top. I think we ended up getting 2 bars, one in the living room, and then one in my bedroom. So like every day, I'd be walking out my bedroom, I'd try a couple, walk into the living room, try a couple. Before you know it, I think after about 8 months, I had about, I think like 8 to 10 reps, which is, it's quite good. If you were to take an adult who can't do chin-ups and then get them 8 to 10 reps in like 8 months, it's a very good achievement. But as a kid, it's much easier because you're much lighter. You've got much better like strength to weight ratio, etc. Yeah, but I had about 8 to 10 reps. I think I built onto that like to 15 or whatever. I think some of them were from dead hang, some of them were for like a little bit of a bend. My stepdad then introduced me to the dead hang chin up. He's like, no, okay, now you can do them. Now you need to like start from here. I'm like, what? Yeah, it's to start from all the way down there. And I'm like, my arms like hands up above my head, and my arms straight, and that made it a lot harder, obviously. But yeah, that was my story to the chin up. I was 13 years old, and I wanted to get in shape for a school trip.
10 months later, mate. There you go. It's good to have that pull-up bar handy at home. I think it's a nice one to do, and like it's the greasing the groove method. I think it was a Pavlov thing, wasn't it? And it's just like just do 1 rep here and there, 1 rep every hour, or 1 rep every 30 minutes. Every time you walk through that doorway, do a chin up. It's a good way to build that strength.
Yeah, exactly. I remember once I could do it, I'd want to do it everywhere because it was just like a new thing that I could do, and like the better you get at it, a bit like handstands, when you like first get your handstand, you want to do them everywhere. That was me in the chin-ups. So like we'd go play with my friends at the forest. I'd want to be doing chin-ups on the tree ledges, or we'd go to the park and there'd be a pull-up bar there, and I'd want to do chin-ups on the pull-up bar, and I don't know, just random places in the school as well. Like, oh, I can hang off this, I can do a chin-up. So it just became an obsession. Obviously, where it becomes an obsession, you just generally get a bit better at it, don't you?
Yeah. Exactly that. It's good to have goals.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was mine. I did have to work for it a bit, but but I've met a lot of people who, that you just ask them to do them, and they're like, oh, I've never done that before, and they'll be able to do a couple. Not very nice, not very clean, but they have the strength for whatever reason. They can generate that tension and pull up. And then you've got others who they just can't touch it. They're hanging and nothing moves. It's quite interesting to see the different physical sort of attributes from different people.
Yeah, exactly. I think, sort of common fitness, like in our general sort of public gyms and stuff like that, what we see people doing a lot of chin-ups or pull-ups that are partial range. To go from a dead hang to have the shoulders elevated and to be able to pull yourself out of that bottom position is a key component that a lot of people are sort of missing. So then when we start to go, okay, like your dad said to you, okay, now you got to do it from a dead hang. When we start to teach people from that position, they just don't have the strength. And I think that partly comes down to the awareness of the muscles that they need to be able to activate and the strength in those muscles to be able to get out of that bottom position. We love to use our biceps, and the biceps are such an easy muscle to activate and to feel working. So in things like chin-ups, we quickly resort to the biceps to pull ourselves up, but that can be a dangerous thing to sort of work on progressively, because eventually it's going to cause elbow pain or shoulder pain because we're just overloading the bicep. And we compare the muscle, the bicep, I know you've got big biceps, Erdi, but the biceps aren't as big. Our biceps aren't as big as our lats or the muscles that we've got in our back. So it makes more sense to be able to activate those muscles in our back to assist us, or to be able to do most of the work in the chin up or pull up, and see the bicep as, a synergist muscle that's helping us to get our chest to the bar or chin above the bar, depending on the standard there.
Yeah, exactly. I think like if you break the chin up down into, I don't know, 3 separate components, you've got the original bit of that dead hang where like you pull the shoulders down away from the ears, and that's obviously mostly lats. That's your lats pulling the shoulders down. And then you've got the next bit, which is like the elbow coming towards the body. That's like elbow abduction. So again, that should be like upper back and lats. And then, like you said, the last bit, you got the bicep where you're closing the rep, so the elbow flexion. That should be where the bicep kicks in the most, as opposed to at the beginning for the majority of the people. I mean, depending on what type of thing you're training, but generally speaking, 99% of the time, you want to be activating and initiating the chin up with the upper back versus the biceps. Yeah, I mean, you do see, like, I know I always just want to be careful with saying, oh, it would definitely like cause injury, or it won't cause injury, because I've seen it both ways. I've seen people who've injured their elbows while doing perfect chin-ups. They've probably had some other structural balances. And then I've seen guys who like would never do perfect chin-ups, but like never have injuries. But definitely the most it is a lot more common to get injured from what I've seen when you're not activating the upper back and you are just like pulling off the biceps. I also think it's because like the rotator cuffs, they're continuously like under stretch. Then they don't ever like contract properly to help pull up. So if you think, if the arm's like up here and then you initiate with a bicep curl, the rotator cuffs are like, they're still under stretch and they haven't like created enough tension to pull the shoulder blades down. And I find it causes like more shoulder issues than elbow issues. But again, I think that it's just like differences in what we've seen over time.
I think you're right. It's definitely higher in shoulder injury. And when we think about it, the shoulder is a ball and socket joint. And we've got to think about, okay, there's lots of different muscles that are connecting to that. But ideally, we want that ball and socket to move around nicely. And the bicep is attaching to the shoulder. And if we start to overload the bicep, we can pull that joint out of alignment. So then we get impingement, or we start to get an imbalance in the shoulder. And that quickly leads to shoulder pain. So if we can't depress the shoulder when we're going into those pull-ups and we're heavily dependent on the bicep, we're just strengthening that forward shoulder position. And eventually it is just going to be out of alignment. Or you see guys that have got such big biceps, like I said, they can't straighten their arms above their head. They can't actually even go into a dead hang because the shoulder just doesn't have the space to even get into that position. Yeah, and generally, like we think about that, if we could progress with that, like what are they going to be like in their 40s and 50s and 60s? Like the shoulder is just going to degenerate and it's not going to be a healthy position to be in. So although we can get around it, we might not injure ourselves. I think for longevity, like we really want to be careful that we're not setting ourselves up for failure there. But yeah, definitely something we could talk about all day. I think the anatomy and how it all goes into place.
Mate, if I had huge biceps in my 60s, I don't think I'd mind if my chin up wasn't that great.
That's it. So you went to try and put your luggage up in an airplane or lift something above your head, mate.
Yeah, I'll just get someone else to do that for me as long as my arms are bigger, it's fine.
All show and no go.
Yeah. So there's a couple different types of chin-ups, aren't there? You've got like and different ways that different coaches teach them. Like if you go down the movement scene, you got like the arching type chin-up where there's like this big lift through the chest, big engagement through the posterior chain. It almost like creates a bit of a crescent shape through the back. And then you've got the gymnastic style chin up or pull up, which is a lot more hollow, and you're getting that like a hollow body shape, and it's the opposite direction. So it's, we're in like a bit more of spinal flexion versus the other one, we're in a lot more spinal extension. Do you have a preference of what you teach now? Because I know I've gone through both phases.
I like both, and I
Yeah.
use both. I think there's a time and a place for both. What I like about the arching versus the hollow is I see the hollow as the harder one. I see
Mm.
the hollow body as the harder form of the pull up. To be able to maintain a tight hollow body and do full range of motion chin ups or pull ups, I find is probably going to be the harder one for most people. And the reason behind that is the lever length. So we're talking about nice hollow body shape and it being a long lever, and the fulcrum of moving around is the shoulder. So you need to have a lot of good core strength, and you need to have a strong amount of pulling strength to move that because of the lever length. So I see that as like that's where we want to get to. That's the ultimate in terms of being able to do pull ups, and that's why I see gymnasts do that form because it is the harder form. But I see the arching as a way that people can start to build that strength. We shorten the lever length. And at the start, I think a lot of beginners, even people that are more intermediate with the chin up, find this harder. And the reason they find it harder is because they've never actually pulled up with their back muscles. And then when we ask them to do arching, well, all of a sudden they've got to be able to pull those shoulder blades back and down and get in that strong arch and do their pull up. So in the beginning, it's harder, but then if we train it and they start to build strength in the arching position, that allows them to get better at the hollow position, I find. So I use both. And for a lot of times with beginners, I will definitely start more with the arching variation than the hollow variation. I think when we're hollow, we've got a tendency to be more bicep focused because we allow more protraction through the shoulders. Whereas when we're arched, we're really trying to fight to keep those shoulders retracted and depressed more. So I feel, from my experience working with the clients I've worked with, and in the gym when I had it, I think beginners progress slower initially, probably, but once they got that arching chin up, their progression took off, and they went a lot further than those who tried to, I suppose, start out with the hollow body. What are your thoughts around the two positions, mate?
Interesting. Yeah, but quite similar. The arching one, I think, has a lot more like initial exposure to new sensations, which people aren't aware of. And they're like, oh, I can pull my shoulders back. Oh, I can actually pull with like my mid and my upper back when they're going for the chin up, as opposed to the hollow one being. I've always found the hollow one to be like a lot more in the lats, and it's just harder one to, like you said, to kind of initiate and to kind of work with for beginners. Whereas when you've got the arch, you can having like, for example, maybe even like having like the feet curled back behind you and just like getting more engagement through the posterior chain can just help generate more tension, so they can feel more working to assist them to pull themselves up to the bar. I used to teach the arching one only. I never used to touch the hollow stuff. But since when I met, what's his name, Ido Portal, doing one of his workshops, and he said, the arching one was like it was the perfect chin up, the way he described it. So then I would be like, oh, okay, so this is the only way to chin up, surely. So then I would just advocate that, and I would teach that to everyone. After many years of analysis, I realized actually Ido Portal didn't do a lot of thoracic work, like in terms of thoracic extension. Like he did like some rotational stuff on the floor and on the wall, but he never had like isolated thoracic extension, like in bridge work, for example. Whereas in gymnastics, they do. So what I realized was actually he prefers the arching one, but it's also a good way for them to incorporate thoracic extension into their pull-in work. So he kind of like gets the best of both worlds without needing to do extra thoracic extension work on the side. He would have it incorporated into his chin-up work, because he would do it with like chin-ups, muscle-ups, rows, one-arm chin-ups, the whole lot. It would always come with like this excessive extension in the upper back. So what I then started to do was actually I would differentiate between two types of clients. Those who would like struggle with bridge work, I would make them do more arching based chin-ups. And then those like myself who actually would struggle more with like lat activation and like getting the lats stronger, and a bit like meatier, I would give them more of like the hollow type of stuff. But when it comes to like, this is like a bit later on, when it came to beginners, to be honest, I didn't cue either. I would kind of just like let them do what felt like was easiest for them, if that makes sense. But generally speaking, it would like turn into a bit of the arching one where they like, lift the chest up, pull into the upper back. Yeah. I think that's pretty much where I ended up with it. And that's what my thoughts on it at the moment. I think they're both great.
I think like we touched on before that like for a lot of people, the weakest part or the hardest part of that chin up or pull up is the bottom position because they've not trained it, like that activation of the shoulders. And like you say, in the arch there, it allows people to feel that. Okay, when I arch, it's a lot easier. Whereas when I try to hollow, like people really struggle to get out of that hole in a hollow body position. They naturally want to arch anyway. So we just support that. Well, let's arch, let's over arch, let's really put it into a strong arch so that you can feel how those muscles in your back have to work to be able to get you out of the bottom in that position. And they find that that's easier. So then we start to be able to train the full range of motion in the chin up. And then from there, we can obviously start to build the strength or put the layers on top of that.
Yeah, agreed. It's for a lot of beginners, like you said, it's just building the awareness, building the sensations, get them to like create the mind muscle connections to the areas that they've never done that before. And the like having a bit more of an arch is definitely more useful there because you just get more posterior chain activation. I think it's called, is it irradiation? When you've got like, when you're focusing on contracting one area so much that like other muscles in that same chain, they also start to light up. Emma introduced me to that in one of my, I think, prehab exercises for my shoulders. But the concept sort of like flows elsewhere. So like with the chin up, if you're just squeezing the bar super hard and you're pulling your shoulders back really hard, naturally the contraction and the tension will transfer down the rest of the posterior chain. So it will just like help irradiate and increase the area of tension around the posterior chain that they can feel and get working. So yeah, I agree with you there. I think the arch-in's a good one for that.
My analogy for that radiation, just so it's easiest to explain for my clients, is like I talk about in terms of the bag of sand theory. So it's like, don't be the bag of sand. So if I was to give you a 20-kilo weight plate and tell you to run down the street with it and come back with it, yeah, it's heavy, yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it's a solid object. You can carry that. Okay, it's a little bit easier. If I was to give you the 20-kilo bag of sand and tell you to run down the street with that, that's harder. It weighs the same as the 20-kilo weight plate because it moves around all over the place, it's much harder to carry that bag of sand. So it's like, well, in your chin up, don't be the bag of sand because it's much harder to carry the bag of sand than it is to carry the solid object. So if I can create tension throughout my body, then it's easier for me to move my body as one solid object than it is to be the bag of sand. So that's the analogy that I use for radiation for clients.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great analogy. Like the bag of sand has its places. Like, you want to go dance, be the bag of sand. But we're doing strength. You need to be the plank of wood. Be the 20-kilo weight plate. Yeah.
Let's move into progressions, mate, because I think it'll be an interesting conversation to have. I'd love to hear like your way. Okay, you've got a client who can't do a chin up or a pull up. Where would you start? And maybe what are your first maybe three? Where are you going to start? What's the time frames you making people do these for, and your progressions? Yeah.
Okay. Time frames for me are always 6 weeks. So it's very rare for me to move away from the 6-week mark. So generally when I give a program, it'll last about 6 weeks. It gives them enough time to adapt to the exercise and to figure out the exercise and then adapt to the exercise. First, I need to know, can they hang? Like how inexperienced or experienced is this client? Now, generally speaking, with everyone I've worked with over the last 3 to 4 years, I think I've probably had one person that I couldn't start with eccentric chin-ups because they didn't have the grip strength to even hang or the confidence to like come into a top support of the chin-up hold and like lower down. So in some rare cases when we can't, basically if somebody can't do an eccentric chin-up comfortably, because that's my preferred number one progression, but I realize it's not always the case for everyone. If they can't do that, I would just build them to comfortable hanging. So hanging in pronated grip, supinated grip, while being able to activate the scapula So scapular shrugs or hanging activations, depending on what you want to call them. And I would make sure they can do that for sets of like 10 to 15, and also have them on at least 6 weeks of ring rows. So 6 weeks of the hanging activations and ring rows before they come to any eccentric chin-ups. So that, let's say that would be my like foundation building for that person. And then once they can do that after 6 weeks, then my main number one progression is the eccentric. So for me, progressions I like to go down is, or what I like to build people to. So that the way I like to think of it is checkpoints. It's like, okay, if someone can do this, then usually they can do a chin up. And for me, that's if someone can do an eccentric chin up for 3 reps with about 50, anywhere between 15 and 25% of their body weight added onto them. So a weighted eccentric chin up, about 8 seconds each rep, then they can do a chin up. So my goal is to be like, okay, where are they now? And how do I get them to 3 reps, 8-second eccentrics with 15 to 25% of their body weight? So I just usually, I'll just start them with body weight eccentrics, single to double reps. If they've got the capacity, up to 3 reps. Once they can do that, I'll add pauses into their eccentrics. So they'll pause at the top before they lower down for 3 seconds, pause at the midpoint for about 3 seconds, and pause in the active hang for 3 seconds. Once they can do that and they look comfortable, then I usually add on the weight. And that's when I just keep adding weight for anywhere between the 1 to 3 rep range until they can do it with 15 to 25% of their body weight. That's my main route. Like that, if I had to go super minimal, that's the way I would do it. But they would always have some concentric on the side, whether it's ring rows or like assisted chin-ups, but usually like ring rows or maybe some bicep curls, things like that.
Yeah. I like it, mate. I like what you've got there. I like the idea of the hanging. I find that's quite a good place to start with a lot of people. A, it trains grip strength.
Yeah.
B, it's also, like you say, we can start to build the shoulder strength there and the shoulder awareness. So arching pull-ins is something that I like to use a little bit as well. And yeah, that's scapular depression and stuff. The hang, like, the active hang is the best place to start, I find, for a lot of people, because we want to start to build connective tissue strength around the shoulders. So can we active hang, and can we active hang for 20 to 30 seconds is something that I like to work up to with a lot of clients who want to build, their pull up or chin up strength. I prefer that over the passive hang. And that's only because in the passive hang, we're stretching the connective tissue of the shoulder. And if it's not strong enough there, potentially that could lead to injury. So we want to show that we can actively hang before we start to do a lot of passive hang. So that's one of the things I spend more time on with my beginners, is just like an active hang. Active hang for the time that you can. Can we get 10 seconds? Can we get 15 seconds? And then like slowly start to build that as preparation for, okay, are you ready to start doing chin-ups? I like the eccentrics, but that's my step before doing eccentrics is the isometric hold at the top.
Yeah.
The strongest point of the chin up is at the top. That's the strongest point. So why not? If we're going to start somewhere, I'm just like, well, we just train the part that's the easiest. And mechanical advantage of the bicep is at the top of that chin up. So again, I can train to stand on a box, get your chest to the bar, step off the box, hold that position. I'd go arch the back, bend the knees, bring the heels to your butt. Right, I want you to be able to build up to 30 seconds of being able to hold that top position. Grip strength is there, forearm strength is there, scapular retraction is there, everything's happening at the top position there. And once they can hold that 30 seconds at the top, well, I know that, okay, you can hang on the bar for 30 seconds. Now we can start to train the eccentric chin up. But this is going to be harder than the isometric hold, because now we're not just training the strongest point. We're training the full range of motion here, going through the weakest point of the chin up and coming down to that hang. What's also great about isometrics is the connective tissue again. Okay, if we want to build strength in the connective tissue, then isometrics and slow time under tensions, like the eccentrics, are a great way to train tendon and ligament strength. Okay, so we're strengthening those tendons. So again, it's a good place to start. And then, like you say, moving on to the pauses, I like to do that as well. So I'd go isometric hold first, eccentric at body weight second, building to that 30 seconds because of the connective tissue that we want to build and building that strength there. Then I'm going to go pauses. So I'd go 8 seconds, 8-second pause, chin over the bar or chest to the bar, depending on where they're at. I would come down to a 90-degree elbow bend. And this is the weakest part of the whole chin up. Okay. And I'll come back to that later if we want to talk about it. But the weakest part of the chin up is at 90 degrees of elbow flexion. And then we'd come down and I'd probably pause 10 degrees of elbow flexion and keeping the shoulder depressed. I'd go straight arm and shoulder depressed pause. And then I'd come off the bar. And that'd be about 8-second pause or building up to 8-second pause in each one of those positions. And then I'd probably move to weighted, like you were saying, and building up to those percentages or roughly around those percentages as well before I'd go into concentric. And that depends. Like I know you're saying 6 weeks. For me, it depends on the client. I love to program 6-week phases just like you do. But some people will progress a little bit faster than that. And others might progress a little bit slower than that. So yeah, it's very individual, and that's depending on lifestyle factors, sleep, diet, nutrition, their body weight, all these other things around that.
Yeah. I mean, the 6 weeks is like if someone's making good progress in those 6 weeks, I'll always give them a little incentive or something to do more on their program. So let's say that they've hit all their reps and all their times great in the 6 weeks, I'll just give them a bit of weight earlier instead of waiting for the new phase, for example. And also, obviously, if they haven't hit the target reps and sets, but they've been getting close, then I'll just kind of keep them on for another 6 weeks, if that makes sense. But it's interesting. So the isometrics at the top, how long do you make them build the isometric to?
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
So you do like 30-second isometrics, and then you like to do the eccentrics, which also last about 30 seconds.
1 rep, 30 seconds.
Yeah, one rep, 30 seconds. Yeah. So we end up accumulating pretty much the same time. Just I do mine over 2 to 3 reps or 1 to 3 reps, depending on where they're at. Whereas you go for like a nice big, all right, we're gonna get a 30-second eccentric here, like make it happen.
Yep.
But generally speaking, after they've done their training at the top of isometric hold, top of chin-up hold, they have the strength to then lower down for a single rep for about 30 seconds. Well,
not necessarily. If you've got a 30-second hold at the top, that's the strongest part of the chin-up. So I'm working at the strongest part. And just because I can hold that for 30 seconds doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be able to lower for 30 seconds, because now I'm going to transition through the weakest point in the chin-up and to the straight arm point. So, we might move to, okay, you can do a 30-second hang. Now I'm going to get you to do a 15 to 20-second eccentric, and that might be where they start. And then over the weeks, we'll start to build that so that then they can do a 30-second eccentric.
Gotcha.
Is what I'm sort of aiming for. Like I said, to me, that's the connective tissue strength. Like we're training a lot of this sort of stuff, this slow eccentrics, because we want to strengthen, the tendons of the elbow, the tendons of the shoulder, all those ligaments and everything in there, making it stronger. I also see it as this is more relative strength. It's 30 seconds time under tension or less, which means we're training more nervous system, which means we're training more motor recruitment of the muscle fibers. So it's them learning how to activate more muscle fibers. And it's not just intramuscular strength, training the strength within the muscle, but it's, intramuscular strength. It's intermuscular strength. We're trying to teach the muscles to work together as one system to be able to do the chin up. So better awareness, better activation, so that they can, start to do the concentric phase. I also like to use this, and, Derek did this to me, Derek Witzke did this to me, and we use this with our more intermediate and advanced clients. It's okay, well, let's do a phase of 30-second weighted eccentric chin-ups. Because if we're always doing the concentric stuff, we're building the strength in the muscle hypertrophy, a lot of heavy stuff, then are we actually doing the structural balance stuff, and are we actually building the tendon and connective tissue strength? I can come back and do a 30-second eccentric for advanced clients, a phase of that, just to, okay, let's strengthen the connective tissue a little bit more. Let's do that weighted. And you come off the back of that, if they're doing 40-kilo weighted eccentrics, they'll come off the back of that and like their body weight pull-ups will just be light. They'll feel so easy. And their total numbers of repetitions will definitely go up, and their max 1RMs will go up off that as well. So it's quite an effective tool for beginners, but also for more advanced people as well, I find.
Yeah, I've definitely had phases myself where I've gone from basically isolating eccentric or weighted eccentric chin-ups myself, where I'm not doing much concentric work at all. And then after 6 to 12 weeks, I'll go back into concentric work and I will feel a lot stronger. So it definitely works like from beginner to advanced. I do believe you can still build like connective tissue with concentric stuff. It's just obviously not as isolated as with eccentric work, and the eccentric work will definitely, as well as isometrics when you started and the pauses in as well, will help with the motor control development of the chin up. So again, like if we consider that the beginner doesn't, the reason they can't chin up is because they don't know how to use the muscles to work together, then of course eccentrics is like, it makes sense. It's like, well, then let's give you eccentrics because that's how we teach your muscles to work together. It's like, if you can't drive a car, you go take driving lessons. If you don't know how to use your muscles, you train eccentrics basically, and it will teach you how to train them. It's almost the equivalent. Yeah, I haven't done the top of chin up holds as like a main progression for a long time. I'll probably try it with a couple of people mind at the moment and see how they get on with it. But yeah, usually my main approach would have been the eccentrics. Again, like it's one of those things where it's like there's no real right or wrong.
No.
I think we all find like our paths or our systems that end up working because they're put together in the way that they're put together. But yeah, I also haven't tried 20 to 30 second eccentrics for these for a long time too. So again, I might give them a go for a couple of people and see how they do. Probably not with a lot of weight though for the
I start that because beginners, it's just okay. Can we get to 30 seconds?
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Under your body weight. More advanced people, let's start to add weight to that on those eccentrics.
Yeah. I do remember using them in your gym, like was it 5-7 years ago, however long ago it was, and you getting some good results with that. So nice one.
Yeah, it's a good
so so what type of so we've covered like eccentric type of work. What type of concentric work do you like to do for someone that if they still can't do a chin up? Did you give them concentric work at all if someone can't do a chin up, or do you wait for them to get a chin up first before you do any concentric work?
I'm not doing concentric pull-ups or chin-ups because obviously they don't have that. But we need to be careful when we're doing so much isometric stuff. So when we're doing isometric, we're strengthening a lot of connective tissue, but there's not a lot of blood flow going through the muscles in the isometric holds. You think about the muscles contracted. So it's like a sponge. I'm squeezing the blood out of the muscle when I'm doing these isometric contractions. So in the same session, when we're doing that, obviously we're going to support that with rows and bicep curls and a lot of stuff like that, where we're doing concentric pulls of other variations they can do so that we start to get blood going back to the muscle. And obviously blood is the key in terms of nutrients back to the muscle and recovery. So if we're doing a lot of isometrics, then the accessory work needs to be more blood flow to, look after the health and longevity of the muscle and the connective tissue as well. So my concentrics around that for beginners is, more of your rows is what I'm looking at. Yeah, is that what you mean, or are you talking something else? I would, if they've got access to a lat pull down, I would be using maybe some lat pull down stuff as well.
Yeah, just if you're using like another variation on the chin up. So, like for example, I have various accessories always, but let's say for example I'm training someone towards a chin up, and I have them on the strength work for the chin up twice a week. Usually, depending on that level, maybe after first, maybe if they've been doing it for a couple of phases, they haven't got a chin up yet. I'll split it so that one of them is like an eccentric session or eccentric focused for the A's. And then the second session, I'll give them something like partial chin-ups where, let's say they're standing on the box, they're holding the bar, so the arms aren't at full length. I will then make them pull from wherever that point is. So it will be a point that they can pull from. So the closer they can get to dead hang and pull, the better, obviously. But they'll pick an intensity which goes with a rep scheme. Usually I like to prescribe somewhere between 2 and 4 repetitions. So let's just assume it's like just below 90-degree bend. They start the pull from there, they go all the way to the top, and then they lower all the way down to a full eccentric. So this is what I would class as a partial chin-up from like the bottom of the range. So like one session would be focused on like the weighted eccentrics, one session will be focused on the partial chin-ups. Just something like that, all or assisted chin-ups, for example, where you've got like the feet behind you or the feet in front of you, and you're in dead hang and using the feet to help you come all the way up and down. Do you use any progressions like that, or do you find you don't need to?
It's not common. There have been a few clients where I've used that sort of stuff, but it's not something I would commonly use. Yeah.
Nice.
So I've done some partial rep stuff. Sometimes what I might do is it might be like I get at the top of the chin up, hold the top, come down to where you can pull back up, and then pull back up, and then go all the way back down.
Yeah.
You know,
The 1.5s.
The 1.5s. Yeah. So yeah, I've done that. I mean, Poliquin was, my background is Poliquin, and the strength and conditioning there. He was never much of a fan of partial repetitions. He always talked about the negatives of partial reps. But I do see that they have their place. And, I think the important thing is if you're training partial range, that you need to be also training full range. So if we're going to be doing some partial stuff, then as long as we're going through the eccentric phase of the whole chin up, or as long as maybe we were going to a lat pull down and then we were doing full range of motions on the lat pull down. But if we were just doing like half rep chin ups and then we went on and we did something else and we never went through the bottom half of the chin up, well, then I'd see that as a negative sort of thing that we shouldn't be doing. But as long as we're not doing that and we're doing full range, whether it's just the eccentric, then I think it's got its place. That's my thoughts around that anyway. But I don't do a lot of the partial range stuff, or I haven't in the past, but I can see how it can be beneficial and it can definitely be a useful tool.
But you've obviously just not needed to. Like the method that you choose works well for you. So you're like, I'm gonna stick with this because this is what's getting me results. Yeah, I like it. But yeah, I agree with if you're using partials, there has to be somewhere else in the program where they're also using some full range. This usually always my approach is like, okay, if I'm going to prescribe a partial here, because I just find partials to be a really good way to learn how to contract to pull up. I've come across like two different types of people. There's some who you'll give eccentrics and they'll just learn a skill. Like the eccentric is enough for them to learn that movement and they don't need anything else other than that. But like with myself, eccentrics have never been enough. They've been good to help understand things a bit better, but to build some of the base strength. But they've never, for example, like handstand push-ups. When I was training for handstand push-ups, I had 20-second eccentrics and I was doing 20-second eccentrics and I was doing back-to-back eccentrics, but I could never actually handstand push-up through the concentric motion. But as soon as I added in partials, I unlocked it. And I've had that with a couple of people on the chin up as well. So it might just be that there's a missing link somewhere else and I've had to resort to using partials, for example. Or for whatever reason, the eccentrics just wasn't enough and I had to throw in some concentric work too. But I think generally speaking, if you can get away with just doing eccentrics and building the skill, it's the easiest way to do it. But yeah, I do like to use the partials as well with some people, but it will always be with the concentric. So the concentric will be on like a different session and then the partial will be on different sessions. So they have that exposure to full range strength in the programming. Yeah. Oh, nice one.
Yeah, it's good. Good tool. Yeah, like it. I think a good thing to maybe touch on, because I know we're going to come to bands and a good topic for us to talk. But before we get there, I think what might help us clear up our opinions about bands is the pause repetitions that we're using. So these isometric holds.
Yeah.
Through the eccentric there. Do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to touch on that?
Oh, you mean just how to perform them?
Yeah, that and the why maybe behind what we're doing there and the advantages of adding those pauses at certain points throughout the tune-up.
I mean, my theory is always sticking points. It's like you add pauses at the areas where quite difficult to generate force in. So like you were saying about the 90-degree angle, that one can be quite difficult for people to generate force once you're there. That's usually where the biceps sort of like take over and the lats kind of stop. So it's like the transition period between one muscle group to another once you hit about 90 degrees. And then you've got like near the bottom of the dead hang as well is where I like to add a pause, because that can also be a bit of a sticking point for people. It's like, okay, they can activate the shoulders, but then when they try to stop bending the elbows, nothing happens. So if you add a pause just before that point on the way down in the eccentric, or at least I found it can help develop a bit of strength and awareness in that area. That's my take on the pauses. I usually go for about 3 seconds But so when you said 8 seconds on like all three positions, I was like, oh wow, okay, I've never tried that. But yeah, I normally do 3 seconds at the top, 3 at the middle, and 3 at the bottom. But I will do 2 to 3 reps. So it ends up being
Fill that
similar
up.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's quite interesting. But yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
You've hit the nail on the head. It is the sticking points and it is the hard points. We want to add pauses around the sticking points. So isometrics are a great way to build strength within the range where you hold the isometric plus or minus 10 degrees. So plus or minus 10 degrees of the elbow flexion or of the shoulder flexion or extension that we're after, whatever we're training, whatever exercise that is, we're going to gain strength in that point and plus and minus 10 degrees. So we're going to pause. We're going to add pauses at those points where it's often people are going to struggle in the chin up, the lockout. Oh, geez, can I get above the bar? 90 degrees point. Most people, if you're doing max reps of a chin up, the point you're going to fail is on the next rep, I'm pulling up, but I just can't get past that 90 degrees. And that's not always the case, depending on structural balance. Maybe you've got certain muscles lagging, but most common, you see people not being able to get past that 90-degree point. And like you said, that bottom point, roughly 10 to 15 degrees of elbow flexion, that's the hard point for a lot of people to break through, because if you're doing the chin up correctly and I've depressed the shoulder blades, I've pulled the upper arm bone into the back of the capsule, but now I have to get the bicep to activate. And it's easy for me to get the bicep to activate. The strong point of the bicep is when the elbow is in front of the body. This is an easy point for the bicep to activate. But now if I put the shoulder behind in that retracted position and I try to activate the bicep, it's a lot harder. And we could talk about the points, in our accessory work, bicep curls. A Scott curl where the elbow is in front of the body, you're going to lift more weight than you will with elbows beside the body, or again with the elbows behind the body. So you've got these 3 elbow points of your bicep curl, and that's the mechanical advantage of the strength point. So if I'm allowing the shoulders to be protracted and pull out of my chin up, then that's easier for me to get the bicep activation. But when it's to back and down, it's a lot harder. So that pause at the bottom is allowing us to start to build strength in this position so that we can get the strength out of the hole and start to pull up out of it. So it's exactly that. I use 3 pauses or 4 pauses, but then as people get stronger, and if there is a weak point, we might only use 1 pause. And that pause could be at the 90-degree point, or it could be at the 10 degrees or 15 degrees of elbow flexion point. And that could be a longer isometric, and it's a great way to build strength in that key point. So yeah, I think that's the important part about the pauses. More advanced people can use the pauses. If you're doing weighted chin-ups and you always get stuck at that 90 degrees, well, then do some pauses at that 90 degrees in an eccentric. And you'll probably start to feel that you can break through that sticking point or that plateau and do more reps at a heavier weight.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Have you also noticed that sometimes limb length can play into it? Like with the pauses at the top. So like if if the forearms are a little bit shorter, it can be a bit harder to get like the full close, or is it the other way around? And what you'll need to do is like come into a bit more shoulder extension at the top, where you're like pulling the elbows back behind you, which is kind of what you were saying earlier, but you teach it with elbows back behind anyway, don't you?
Yeah, well, most of the time I'm going to do arching with a lot of people at the
Yeah.
top, so it's going to be elbows behind that top at that top position.
Yeah.
We could
Like,
talk about grip here in a sense of like, okay, let's talk. The easiest grip to do your pull up or chin up with is going to be this close grip, maybe 1 fist width apart, holding the bar like this, because again, it's elbows in front of the body and a mechanical advantage for the biceps. So if I get someone to hold a chin up here compared to holding a chin up here,
Yeah.
this is significantly easier. So this is an easier point for people to start. So as we go wider in the supinated grip, it becomes a lot harder. The pronated grip, it could be the same. These can sometimes be hard if you don't do a lot of reverse grip bicep curls. If you don't have strength through the long head of the bicep, then these close grip ones can be quite difficult. This is probably an easier version for most people in terms of the pronated, and it gets harder again as you start to go out wider if you're going to get full range of motion. And then you've obviously got neutral grip as well. So, there's an advantage here with neutral grip, but for some people, the people find neutral grip easier if you've got that on the pull-up bars. And for some people, this becomes hard. And again, it depends on the bicep and whether you're training, just the short head or the long head of the bicep and the balance between those two. But I also find, working this with a lot of beginners can be beneficial as well. That's only if they've got access, to a fixed bar, they can do that on the neutral grip. The rings are a different beast. Like, the rings are a dynamic surface. So the rings are significantly harder than the pull-up bar. You can create more torque on the pull-up bar. It's a stable surface than the rings. There's a lot more nervous system going on training on that dynamic surface. So I'd avoid the rings, for beginners most of the time. Also because of the extra demand placed on the connective tissue when we start to do rings as well.
Yeah, rings just have a bit more of a rotational element to them as well. I think they just require a bit more out of the rotator cuffs. Like I had a client, and 2 years, she's still training with me now, but 2 years ago, she tried and do a chin up on the rings, and she had something going on with her left rotators. And every time she tried and chin up, like she would just, it almost looked like her shoulder was just coming out of place, her left shoulder. And we realized that the shoulder blade just wasn't wrapping around the rib cage properly, and the rotator cuffs are just a lot weaker on that side. So we got them a lot stronger. Like she could do chin-ups on the bar, no problem. Like there was no, like the shoulder wouldn't come out of place. It would stay packed and depressed and retracted. But as soon as she went to the rings, it'd come out of place. So, but like over the years, we kind of fixed that up, and yeah, it disappeared. Like she can now do chin-ups with weight on rings, and there's no issue. But yeah, the rings, like you said, are a bit of a different beast, and they do offer some different sort of instabilities. But yeah, so bands.
That's it, mate. So did you use a band with her? Did you help her get chin up with a band?
To be fair, she didn't use any bands. I didn't use any bands with Adora. She just never needed to. I don't think she had a lot of the strength, and she could already like do chin-ups. So I didn't really use any bands there. Yeah, everyone's got different opinions on bands. I personally, I went through a phase where I never touched them. And then recently I've started in like the last year or year and a half, I started using them a little bit more, but it's basically always been as accessory work. It's always been as, okay, they've done their eccentrics or they've done their partials. Right now, I just want them to do more reps in the concentric because I don't think this person believes that they can do the chin up. And it's like a bit of like a mental barrier breakthrough more than it is like a heavy strength training tool, if that makes sense. So it's like take a band, do some reps, and just let your body believe that you can do a chin up. And they'll do like 4, 5, 6, build it up to 8 usually. And then they usually, like after a couple of phases, they'll come back to it and the body just starts pulling easier. That's like, this is like without getting into the mechanics of strength curves and whatever. It's just make them do the movement, kind of like a lat pull down, so that they can believe that they can chin up. That's been my take on it.
You've gone to the dark side, mate. You've
I
gone
know,
to the
mate.
dark side.
I knew you wouldn't approve.
I see the bands as entertainment. You're entertaining your clients, you're not trading. But anyway, I mean, yeah, I see people use them. When I own the gym, my number one rule was to every coach in the gym, we do not use bands to assist pull-ups. If you're not strong enough to do a pull-up, then you're working on eccentrics, or you shouldn't be on the pull-up bar. Yeah, we could go into the talk about the strength curve, and we could say that bands don't support the strength curve. We know that. If you're a decent coach, you understand that it doesn't support the strength curve. We know the weakest point in the pull-up is at 90 degrees of elbow bend due to the fulcrum length. And we know that the most assistance from the band comes at the bottom. So that's definitely one of the key things we want to think about. When we're talking about building the strength between the muscles, we're not teaching the nervous system how that works when we're using a band because it doesn't match the strength curve. My biggest thing with the band, and I hate it when coaches say, oh, I just want to teach them technique. That's a lie because it's not teaching them technique. Because
yeah, it doesn't. The band changes the technique.
Changes the technique altogether. And the missing key for a lot of people is the scapular work. It is the scapular strength, the straight arm scapular strength. In the dead hang, the active and passive hangs, the scapular depression. When I'm in the bottom position with a band, I don't need to scapular depress. The band is giving me so much assistance there that I can pull with my scapulars elevated. I'm never going to do that in an unassisted pull-up. And if I am, that's going to quickly lead to shoulder pain. So I'm not teaching the right mechanics. I'm not teaching the right technique of being able to depress the shoulders, because the band does all the work there. And even if I'm really strict on the client and say, keep your arms straight at the bottom, depress the shoulders, show me that, and then pull with the bicep when you're using a band. Awesome. Okay, you're trying to tell me you're teaching technique. The strength required in the shoulder depression when the band is assisting is never going to be even close to the strength required without the band being there. So that you're just not going to get that depression strength with the band. And it's just not going to help the client break that plateau or get out of that plateau. And if anything, it's going to increase the chance of injury attached to that. The people who use bands are beginners. We're going to give a beginner a band, because if you can do a chin-up, you're not going to go and get a band out. But the thing is, the connective tissue for beginners is not going to be developed. And we're going to start loading them up or start getting them to do concentric work, which is training more of the muscle, less of the connective tissue, over eccentric work, where we could be training connective tissue and making sure that we're bulletproofing or limiting the chance of injury if they're strong enough to start doing. So in my mind, the band has just got too many negatives and not enough positives. If we look at risk to reward ratio, the risk of injury attached to using a band and trying to develop pull-ups is much higher, and the reward is a lot lower, when I could be spending that training time more effectively on eccentrics, on partial reps, on all of the other great things I think we spoke about. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, there's always a sacrifice. It's like you can't just like add something in and not take away from somewhere else. So it's like if you've added some banded chin-ups in, it's like, okay, where have you taken away from? Could you have done some more sets of eccentrics, etc.? I do also think that there's only so many sets of eccentrics you can do before.
Agreed. Yep.
Before like there's not much more you can get out of them in a single session. So yeah, I also don't like the idea of like giving bands without supervision or without any knowledge of what's going on. I think the band is like it's an easy way to get attached to the idea that, all right, if I just keep making the band lighter, I will eventually get the chin up. Or I don't need to do anything else. I just need to do my banded reps. And I think that's where a lot of the misconceptions sort of come down to it. But like I've seen results with people I've trained of using bands and them going from 2 chin-ups to like 6 chin-ups afterwards, etc. I'm not saying it can't be done another way. Like I'm not, there's obviously other ways that it could have been trained. But with me, it's like the band is always an accessory if I do put it in there. But you're right, for technique, it messes up the technique. Is it gonna build connective tissue in the scapula? I mean, or in the area at the bottom of the chin up? Yeah, it's provided a lot of assistance there. You could make the band really light, but then it's almost, if you make it too light, they don't even get anywhere near to the full rep because it doesn't help them at the top, and it's generally where they're weaker anyway, coming past that 90-degree point. So yeah, it's not really a builder for any of that stuff. Like you still need to rely on your eccentrics, you still need to rely on your pauses and your other variations. So you always need to be careful when going down the band route. It's like, am I using the band as a coping mechanism or am I using it as a supplement? It's like, for me, it's always been like the supplement, but it can't be your bread and, I don't want to say bread and butter. It can't be your meat and veggies.
Yeah, that's it, mate. I mean, sometimes I'm tempted with it. Like I see people doing bar muscle ups with a band, let's say.
I see that, yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah, I can. It is like, well, sometimes you've got to learn that movement, and it can be greasing the groove. Like if I can somehow practice that movement and get a feel for it, then maybe that's going to translate for me understanding the movement better and being able to transition. I haven't used bands with the muscle up with my clients yet. I do see it, and I do see people make progress with it. But yeah, it's just been a stance that I've sort of taken with bands over the years, and I sort of toying with the idea of, okay, is it the right thing? Isn't it the right thing? And it's hard to say. I mean, yeah, there are people that obviously will get there, but I think, yeah, it can become the crutch. It can become something that people hold on to. Pull-ups, oh, quick, where's my band? Or muscle-ups, oh, quick, where's my band? I think if you don't have the strength and then you can't be doing, it's something, it's a tool you've got to be really careful with. Yeah, and like I say, supervised, it can be tricky as well with online coaching to make sure that, they're using the band correctly, if there is such a thing. But for my, like, the way I look at it, risk reward ratio, I prefer people to spend the time on, barbell rows or on ring rows or on other accessory work that's going to build the concentric strength and carry over to chin ups. And then the chin up stuff would be the eccentrics, the pauses, the other stuff that we sort of spoke about. So
Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah.
I've yeah. I get what you're saying. I've never used it for muscle ups either. Like I've seen guys using it for ring muscle ups and for bar muscle ups. For the ring muscle up, I've never used bands. I never touched it. The bar muscle up, I think I might have tried it once, but I never like trained it, if that makes sense.
Mm.
But yeah, again, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know anyone who's been using them enough to like analyze the results and the stats of their students. But I do see them getting used. So, and I do see them getting recommended by people who can do muscle ups, for example. But then I also know there's like we can achieve the chin up, the muscle up, and etc. without using them too. So yeah, I don't think they're like they got demonized a lot from Poliquin and Portal, etc. I don't think they deserve the level of demonization that they got, but I do appreciate that it was needed at the time as a culture break, because it's like everyone was using bands to do their chin ups, muscle ups, etc. So they basically, you need a hard character to come in and be like, no, bands are bad. Do it this way, and then it does it does offer like a level of controversial marketing, which can be helpful, and also it does expose people to different ways to doing things. Whereas if they just came in and were like, oh yeah, you can still use the bands, but I'd prefer if you did this, people would still just use the bands. You know what I mean? So there is.
Yeah. I just think you see a lot of people using bands. I think CrossFit, was a big thing that brought the bands in, and we'll touch on kipping. We were using bands for kipping, and there's just all this stuff going on with bands, but it wasn't the work going on around it to educate people about, okay, you know what? You need to be doing eccentrics. You need to be doing pulse holds. You need to be doing this other stuff, and we need to get you away from the band. It was just accepted that, okay, if you can't do a chin up, use a band.
Yeah.
Well, that becomes the rule of the gym, and it just doesn't encourage people to step away from the band. As soon as they hear the word chin up, it's like, oh, I'm going to go get myself a band.
Yeah.
And I think, they can spend months on a band, years on a band, and not make any progress. And I'm just like, well, that's such a waste of training time. You could have been doing so much more that could have had you doing chin ups within 2-3 months, but you're still 2 years later relying on a band or using a band.
It reminds me of when parents give their kids screens to look at when they want them to be quiet. It's the same thing as like the trainer's teaching a class and like they get a newbie come in and this newbie can't do chin-ups. Like, hey, just take a band, do your reps. It's basically, it's lazy parenting, it's lazy coaching.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. We could go on all day about bands, but
yeah, we'll move on.
Let's with an eye on the clock, let's move on. Let's talk about kipping, another one of my favorites.
Let's not talk about kipping for very long. I'll just give my take on it. Kipping doesn't teach you anything. Like kipping is performance, it's for competitions, it's for reps for time. That's my take on kipping. There is an element of ballistic strength and carryover, but like unless you're in a gymnastic setting, I don't think you're going to be getting the elasticity strength development that they use, because they don't use kipping, but when they train giants and things like that in gymnastics, there's this element of like putting force through the already conditioned. Very important to note, these ligaments and tendons and the connective tissue is already conditioned and can handle these like elastic and ballistic forces. Whereas if you're just taking someone in the gym, you're making them do kipping chin-ups and kipping pull-ups or whatever, they're not ready, in my opinion, for this level of like force through the connective tissue in the way. But if you go into a gymnastic setting where they do this stuff properly, they get benefits from using the elasticity of the muscles and the connective tissue. So, but it's a different playing field. It's like, it's very fucking different. So I'd never teach kipping stuff. I've done it before. I remember it was actually in your gym in CrossFit Hackney. There was like somebody, I think it's once you left, they put like kipping pull-ups or whatever into the session, and I had to teach it. I'd never done a kipping pull-up in my life, right? And I had to teach these guys kipping pull-ups in their gymnastic bodyweight session. So I was like, hold on a minute, guys. Give me 5 minutes. Let me just figure this out. So I spent 5 minutes like practicing the kipping pull-up. I was like, okay, cool. This is how you do it. It's like I could do it, right? I'd never practiced it. I had the strength. Why? Because I trained pull-ups properly beforehand.
Right.
But there's a lot of people in this class that like they couldn't do pull-ups. I was like, all right, if you can't do pull-ups, you shouldn't be doing this. I'm like, to be fair, I'm not comfortable teaching this anyway, but it's on the program and they're making me teach it. So I'm going to teach it to you. But would I recommend it, or do I teach it from an online coaching perspective? Saying no, I don't. It's just there's no reason for me to. But yeah, that's all I've got to say on it. What do you reckon?
I agree with you. If you're a competitive CrossFit athlete, there's a need for kipping pull-ups. You're racing the clock. It's for time. If you're a competitive athlete, it's for money. It's for sponsorship. It's a high risk exercise. The risk to reward ratio of kipping pull-ups, high risk, very, 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 very low reward, unless you're going to make money out of it. So if you're not a CrossFit athlete and you're not competing, then there is no point in a kipping pull-up is my take on it. The risk is high of injury and the reward is low. Like if I was going to compare kipping pull-ups to chin-ups or strict chin-ups or isometrics, or all the stuff that we're talking about, the benefits, the reward out of that stuff is so much greater. So why waste my training time on kipping pull-ups when I could be doing this other stuff? Kipping pull-ups are a plyometric exercise. The force being put through the connective tissue in a plyometric exercise, 4, 5, 6 times body weight. Gymnasts are doing that in their gymnastics routines. Their connective tissue has been developed for that.
Yep.
If you can't do a strict pull-up, you've got no right to be doing a kipping pull-up at all. If you can't be doing a strict pull-up with at least 50% of your body weight attached to you, which I'm guaranteeing you the elite CrossFit athletes can do, then you probably shouldn't be doing a kipping pull-up at all. So the sport of CrossFit and CrossFit for health and fitness are two very, very different things. And there's a line that just gets crossed too many times, I believe, and it shouldn't be in the health and fitness regime, kipping pull-ups. If anything, strict pull-ups are harder. So if we're doing the sport of fitness and we're competing and we're looking at doing, okay, who's the strongest, fastest, fittest athletes? Why are we kipping? If strict are harder, why aren't they putting strict pull-ups into the CrossFit games and the CrossFit workouts and then getting rid of this?
Yeah, that's one thing that always baffled me. It's like, why are they actually? Why are they doing kipping in the first place? Like, it's just not something worth promoting. I mean, okay, like whatever, they're getting these elite guys doing it. They've trained towards it. They've built towards it. Okay, but why? They could just be doing them strict.
Yeah,
you can still do strict for time. You know what I mean? Like, but you can't do it for as fast of time as kipping. I guess that's what it comes down to, though, doesn't it? It's like if you tell someone to do 50 pull-ups, technically, if they're kipping, they're still doing 50 pull-ups. Like they're going through the full range of motion. So then how would you standardize it and be like, okay, you're not allowed to do the swing? Do you know what I mean? Like, how would you say they have to be strict?
Toes have to stay in front of the vertical line of the bar.
Yeah, so you'd have to like go down the calisthenics ruling system where the toes would have to stay there, and then I guess that would rule out the kipping.
That'll pull out the kipping.
Anyway.
Yeah, but that's my opinion. Like, I know there's going to be people that disagree with that, and if you're a CrossFitter, you're going to say, "Oh, I love kipping and it's what I want to do," and da 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 da. But I'm just going to say that there is a huge risk of injury, and if you injure yourself doing kipping pull-ups, if you tear a bicep, well, there goes months of training. Like, is that really what you want? Is that a risk that you're willing to take?
This is probably where our clientele differ a lot as well. Like you train a lot of CrossFit athletes, whereas I don't. Like kipping for me doesn't even come into a topic. I haven't spoken about kipping pull-ups in I don't know how long. I don't train any CrossFitters. Whereas for you, I'm sure like probably once a month you need to sit down with someone and be like,
no, I used to train CrossFitters. I don't these days. I mean, I used to have the CrossFit box, but again, the rule in there was like, if you can't do strict chin-ups, then there's no kipping. And I was very reluctant to program kipping. And if it was kipping pull-ups, it wasn't high volumes of kipping pull-ups. I kept it very limited in the programming just because I was more about the health and longevity and safety of the members. And in my mind, it wasn't something that was conducive to that. So that's my thoughts.
So quick one. Biceps as an accessory work for chin up. So we're talking a supinated chin up here. Which bicep accessories do you go to if you're programming them? So like assuming they're like the C's in a program, you've done your eccentrics as your A's, you've done maybe some rows as your B's, and then maybe this person you feel like has got a bit of a missing link in the biceps. Do you have like a preferred variation that you'd like? Or do you like, be like, this person needs a bit more hammer, like neutral grip. This person probably needs a bit more incline or decline bicep curls or preacher curls, etc.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. I could go a long way. But one of the things I want to say is like if I'm doing supinated chin-ups for a client, then I'm not doing supinated curls.
Yeah,
or
same.
just straight up supinated curls. We want to be
Same.
balancing out the bicep muscle. So in a supinated, we're training more short head of the bicep. In a pronated, it's more long head. In a hammer grip or a neutral grip, you're getting a little bit of both. Some curl variations that I like to use would be Isometrics. So we're supinated up, pronated down. So you get to the top and you rotate with the dumbbell and come back down. I also like to use dumbbells over the barbell with bicep curls just because it's more unilateral and we're making sure there's structural balance left to right. If you're stronger on your right side on the barbell, it's going to want to take over. So anyway, the Zoderman curl is one I really like to use. The other one I like to use is with a barbell, or you can do it with the dumbbell as well. It's a reverse grip and it's a pause at 30 degrees of elbow flexion on the concentric. So I start with the arm straight. I lift to 30 degrees of elbow flexion and I pause for 8 seconds. And then I complete the curl. I go all the way up and then I go all the way down. Then I lift and I pause. We talk about breaking this point in the pull-up, okay, where the bicep can generally sometimes be a little bit weak. And adding that pause in just a little bit of deflection, the isometric there, is a great way to start to strengthen the bicep in that range. So I like to use that pause as well. And the other thing I like to work on is hammer curls, just because again it's that neutral grip and it's a little bit of a mix of both. But I wouldn't generally go to a supinated curl, a pure supinated curl, if I'm doing supinated chin up work as the primary exercise in the session.
Yeah, pretty much the same for me. I like reverse curls. I like Zotmans. I like hammers. I'd never give supinated curls. The only time I give supinated curls is if I'm working someone on pull-ups and I'm not working them on chin-ups. That's generally when I do supinated curls. But yeah, good stuff. Okay, nice one.
And then we talk about the different points of the elbow in bicep curls. So I talked about this quickly before. In a Scott curl, I'm going to put the elbow on a bench and it's going to be in front of the body. Mechanical advantage. The bicep is already shortened here because the shoulder's already in flexion. So I can lift a much heavier weight here. This will help with above 90 degrees of the chin up. This will get me, if I'm struggling to get my chin over the bar, chest to the bar, then I could do a little bit of this stuff to help improve that strength.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to go biceps or elbows beside the body. So we're thinking standing barbell curls, standing hammer curls. A lot of sort of standing curls are good for that. We're locking the elbow beside the body there.
Yeah.
This is a little bit harder. You're not going to lift as much weight as you would with the elbow in front of the body. The mechanical advantage is a little bit less. And then we're going to go to incline curls. So I'm lying back on the bench, but now the elbow is behind the body, okay? Now the bicep starts in a stretched position, which is really good in terms of like, we're doing a lot of work on the biceps. We want to be trying to stretch them out as well. Now this is going to be much weaker as well. And I'm keeping the elbows behind the body as I'm doing those curls. So one of my favorites is like, let's do an incline Zoderman curl.
Yes.
All right. So we put it back there. Yeah, for those that don't know, the Zoderman curl, one of the big advantages is you're stronger in a supinated grip. So you're lifting a heavy weight in a supinated grip. And then I move to a weaker position, which is a pronated grip, and I'm working the eccentric of the pronated grip. So it's a way to overload the pronated grip. You wouldn't be able to do pronated curls at that weight. You mechanical advantage to lift the weight, overload the eccentric phase of the pronated.
Eccentric loading for the forearm extensors and that part of the bicep. Yeah. Nice. I'm gonna need to shoot. Yeah. But did we have anything else we needed to cover for the chin up?
I think the only thing, we could talk about rows, we could talk about grip training, which I think we've touched on. I think the only other thing, we could finish up on a little bit is we talk about the stabilizers, the deep stabilizer muscles of the shoulder, if we've got time.
Yeah. So you got like the rotator cuffs. So My favorite accessory or rotator cuff accessory is the anterior plane one for the chin-ups and handstand push-up sort of plane. So basically it's when let's say if you lift your arm out in front of you to 90 degrees, so your hand's in front of the shoulder, and then you keeping the elbow fixed, you bend the arm up, so you've got like a 90-degree bend in the elbow, your hand is now facing the sky. And then you do your rotations from here. So keeping the shoulder sort of like depressed and retracted, you'll lower the arm down to about shoulder level with the other shoulder. And you'll like lift the arm back up. So for those of you that are watching the video for this podcast, you'll see what I'm doing. But this is the one that I've seen to have the most carryover towards the chin up. And it's the one that I end up sort of programming for most of my students who seem to be weaker in those deeper stabilizers. But yeah, what are your takes on it if you had to do a quick?
So as I said, rotator cuff and lower trapezius are the two key
Yep.
stabilization muscles that I like to use. Lower trapezius, the best thing is trap 3 raises. So 45-degree arm out away from the body. It could be a head supported single arm trap 3 raise, or you could be doing a prone trap 3 raise. Obviously prone is working end range. So you've got to get good shoulder flexibility for that. But we're going to try and get that lower trapezius activated, which helps with the shoulder depression and keeping the shoulder blades pulled down. The rotator cuffs, we've got different points. Again, it's all to do with the elbow, where the elbow is positioned in relationship to the body. So we've got a point where the elbow is like 45 degrees away from the side. So we might do a low cable external rotator in this position. If anyone's got any shoulder impingement or any issues with the shoulder, we want to start with this one. The higher the elbow gets when we do these rotations, the better the capsule needs to be, or the health of the shoulder needs to be able to do the external rotation. So I could be doing a 45-degree low cable, or I could be lying on my side, placing a block underneath the elbow and doing sideline external rotation. So that's where I'd start with most clients because of just the shoulder structure and if they've not done a lot of that. Then we're going to move from that 45 degrees, we might start to come up. So you've got ones where you're doing on the side, might be just a single arm Cuban sort of thing. Or like you said, you've got the one where the arm's abducted in front and you're doing this as well in this position.
Yeah.
Paul was a big fan of doing these supported. So sitting with the elbow on a box or on top of a bench if you're standing. If you're not supporting, it's a very anterior delt focus exercise. So when you support the elbow, you're going to get that activation of rotator cuff muscle. So you want to be careful of that as well.
It's a bit more isolated when it's supported, agreed.
That position. And then you could be doing double Cubans if you get to the position like that. I really like a prone Cuban. So on an incline bench doing Cubans, that's quite a tough exercise as well.
Agreed.
So
against gravity.
Different positions, elbow 45 out, coming high and abducted, and we're coming in front. And I'd usually try and cycle between some of those.
Yeah.
You've obviously also got the knee up one. That was a favorite of Pollockman's. So just variety there. And the position of the elbow dictates which part of the rotator cuff muscle we're using as well. So we want to try to get balance across them. So just by rotating them, it's a good way to do it.
Agreed.
Stefan, the guy from Kilo Strength, he's got a few good posts about that as well. And he's quite good at talking about stuff as well. So, but you're right. I think the elbow in front is the best one in terms of building that strength for the chin up. I also think the Cuban's good as well, just when you start thinking more pull-ups and the position of where in the pull-ups.
If we're going for pull-up, then Cuban's more transferable based on how the elbows are. Whereas with the chin-up, the anterior plane one or arm abducted is generally the higher carryover, assuming, like you said, you have the healthy shoulder capsule to be able to support that. Yeah, nice.
And I'm only going high reps with that. I'd be doing like sort of 10s to 15s rotator cuff work for most beginners. Maybe coming down to sets of 8 with more advanced, but it's more about the volume, getting it in there.
Yeah, and that'd be like towards the end of your session as well, if not the last exercise. Yeah.
Good point.
Usually when I program, I know you've had yours in your A's before, haven't you, with Derek? Yeah.
If it's whatever you train first in the program is what's going to get the biggest stimulus and the best result from. So if the rotator cuff is lacking, it could be in an A. Like if they're really struggling with rotator cuff work, that chick that you were talking about who was struggling with shoulder and the ring chin up, like I'd be putting that in the A for her to really get that fired up.
To be fair, we had some scapular guide in her warm up. Yeah.
Yeah, and that sort of stuff. So It depends, and sometimes it can be good just to isolate that. So I might do it as a B, but it might just be a B1, and that's it.
Yeah.
Not supersetted with something, and just like, all right, let's get the hammer and tong down with the rotator cuff
Nice.
work. Also, like Pollock was a big fan of doing rotator cuff work with pulling exercises, not so much with pushing exercises. So you do a bent over row and a rotator cuff, or you know, the pull up and a rotator cuff. Yeah, and if you're doing a lot of pressing work, like a lot of bench press, a lot of overhead press, a lot of planche work, a lot of protraction, you should always be doing rotator cuff work
Yep.
after that. Like C's in the program or something should be rotator cuff work just to
Also,
keep the shoulders pretty healthy.
great. Yeah, I think we've covered quite a lot. We've gone over some good details there of like how people can start approaching their first chin up and the accessory work needed for that, and things they should avoid, things they shouldn't avoid. But yeah, I am going to need to shoot.
Mate, you've
Right.
got plans. It's so good, mate.
Yeah.
Great to
Yeah.
chat to you, and I'm sure people would have taken a lot from this. It's been a good
Yes,
conversation.
definitely. Just shoot us over a message if you have any questions about anything we've covered, and yeah, we can always help you out. But hopefully that's given the guys some good value of how to approach the chin up training.
Nice one, mate. Where can people find you? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you if they've got questions, mate?
Learning to Human on Instagram, and yeah, that's it. That's the best one.
Yeah, I'm at stretch.rainer, or I'm at TST Method on Instagram. Otherwise, the website's just tstmethod.com, and yours is learningtohuman.com or .co.uk.
.co.uk. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it, mate. You'll have to update that to an AU site while you're here.
Yeah. Exactly. Awesome.
All right, mate. You enjoy today, and it's been good to chat to you, and I
Thanks.
look forward to catching up again next month.
Yeah, exactly. Great to chat.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.